Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland. This is my weekly show where I take a deep dive into a particular film, and this week I have one of my fellow SiftPop writers, Foster, here to join me.
Hello.
And we're going to be talking about Full Metal Jacket, which is one of only two films released by Stanley Kubrick in the 1980s, and turned out to be his second to last film, which also means next week, with a very interesting show going to be wrapping up with Eyes Wide Shut and then starring some Martin Scorsese, which will take me literally until June. After looking at his 40 films that I'm like, oh my, this is going to be an adventure. And it's interesting because Full Metal Jacket's probably one of the ones that I've watched the least out of his major ones. So I'm interested to talk to you about it, Foster. But for those who have watched the show before, we have a couple of segments, and we're going to get things started with our coming attractions. So we're going to be talking about films that have come out today when this episode drops, which is Friday, September 3rd. And we were just discussing before we started recording, there's one big movie coming out this weekend, which there's some potentially really interesting indie films coming out, like a new Riz Ahmed film, and you're going to be speaking about one of them coming on a new Netflix film. But as somebody who's a huge Marvel fan, personally, I'm excited to see a Marvel movie.
Yeah.
And this will be the first one I'm going to be seeing in a theater since, what was the last one that came out? Far From Home?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's been 2 years. So I'm excited to be talking about Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. So why this is my most anticipated film coming out this weekend is because I just love Marvel movies, and that's like the bare minimum. But there's so much I'm excited about because it seems like something different. We're going to be getting a martial arts film inside a Marvel movie. It's something different in terms of it's like almost an entirely Asian cast. It's a kind of pulling that Black Panther where it's like you have like a couple of characters, but like in general, it's about a very different culture. And based off of the trailers, the action looks awesome. I've heard really great things from a lot of the buzz going around. And I'm really interested to see what random characters pop up in this tournament that's in this movie after they tip their cards in one of the trailers and release at the Abominations in a Marvel movie for the first time since 2008. So that's very interesting. But Foster, are you excited for this one?
Yeah, this is my most anticipated, even though I'll be talking about something else. I've also heard good things about this one, especially about the action. That shot on the bus when he kicks both guys at the same time, every time I see that, I'm excited. I have no connection to these characters or anything, although I do like most of the other Marvel movies. So yeah.
It's I think it's going to be interesting to see, because obviously they set up the 10 rings so early in Marvel, and they only like scratched the surface with it. And then, we got the Mandarin in Iron Man 3. And after, like, now I could watch that and think it's absolutely hilarious. But
he's so funny, Ben Kingsley, in that. It's so good.
So funny, and it's so perfect for a Shane Black movie. It's so unexpected and funny, but like initially I'm like, what? And then the second that Guy Pearce yells at the end of the movie, I'm the real Mandarin, I'm like, no, you're not. Don't you dare say that. But now we're actually getting the real Mandarin, so it's all okay. And I've been waiting for this moment ever since I bought Thor: The Dark World on Blu-ray, and it came with All Hail the King short film, which is also hilarious. If you out there watching this video haven't watched that short film, it's just Trevor Slattery being funny again. But then him getting kidnapped by the people who work for the real Mandarin. So they teased this back in, when did The Dark World come out? Like 2013? So I'm like, now we're finally getting it. One thing I did want to bring up, I was a little disappointed after the second trailer came out and all everyone wanted to talk about was Abomination. And I'm like, but there are so many other cool things in this trailer
that
actually have to do with the movie. Because like I can guarantee you Abomination's probably going to be in this for like a minute or two.
Yeah.
So setting up for obviously him popping up in something else, because you know that's how Marvel rolls now. But I'm excited for it. So the film that you picked, so at least we had two things to talk about,
Yes.
was the new Netflix film, Worth. An attorney in Washington, D.C. battles against cynicism, bureaucracy, and politics to help the victims of 9/11, starring Michael Keaton, Stanley Tucci, Amy Ryan, and a few other character actors along the way. But Foster, why are you excited about this film?
Yes, so I heard about this movie for the first time last night when I was looking at movies that were coming out on September 3rd. But for one, it's going to come on Netflix, so that makes my life a little bit easier. Yep. Number two, I really like Michael Keaton and Stanley Tucci and Amy Ryan, especially Stanley Tucci. He's one of my favorites, probably. He'd probably be like top 10 if I were to rank out my favorite actors. I think he's pretty great. I think everyone finds him really likable, but I think his acting skills are almost a little bit underrated because he's really pretty different in a lot of things. Yeah, I have not seen a trailer for this. I only vaguely know the plot, which you just read, but it seems like it has a high 60s Metascore, I think, when I looked at it. So decent reviews, great cast.
Yeah, I also recently just found out about this film actually earlier this morning, because every Saturday I reach out for screeners for the next weekend's movies, and I'm like looking through, I'm like, I don't really reach out to Netflix a whole lot for screeners because I'm like, I have Netflix, I'm just gonna watch it anyway. But figured I'd look into it, and like I love Michael Keaton, and ever since like The Other Guys, he's just been on a roll.
Yeah,
like he's had a complete career resurgence, coming back as Batman now. Recently just watched The Protege, and he's just ridiculously charming in it. And he's just such a great actor. And Stanley Tucci really is a fantastic actor and doesn't get anywhere near the amount of attention he deserves. And he killed it along with Colin Firth in Supernova earlier this year. And that movie's just going to get completely overshadowed. And unfortunately, not enough people talk about it or have seen it, which makes me sad. But he's fantastic in that. And like he can really do all kinds of things, like something as endearing as Captain America, the First Avenger, what he does in Hunger Games.
Yeah.
Which he's so over the top. And then like everybody, like I remember watching Devil Wears Prada for the first time and realizing how great everybody is in that movie. And including him. So I could definitely see, and obviously this is very topical, especially with the 20th anniversary of 9/11 coming up. But I'm very interested to check this out. It does have a really strong cast. I didn't recognize the director by name, nor do I recognize any of their 4 main credits that pop up on IMDb when you look at the profile. So
yeah,
be interested to see. But those are our coming attractions. There's plenty of other films. There's a lot of like smaller things popping up next weekend, but also the other big release is Amazon Cinderella, which I can't say much about, but I got a screener for it. It's a fun time. Well, by the time this releases, it's going to be released. So it's a fun time. It's a crazy, ridiculous musical. And they definitely make an in-joke in it about the fact that Pierce Brosnan can't sing. Because he's in it as the king, and you're like, oh my God, is he going to sing like in Mamma Mia? And they make a joke that he was an amazing singer when he was younger, and I'm like, oh no. Which has a fun payoff in the movie. But anyway, that's a tangent. But what we're really here to talk about is Stanley Kubrick and Full Metal Jacket, which I was watching this yesterday with my fiance, and she had never seen it before. So she's not a huge fan of Kubrick. And we were sitting down to watch it, and like the title comes up and she's like, you know, that's like a name from like the, well, I'm like, just you wait. They'll tell us exactly what it is. But I always describe this as like a tale of two films. And I think most people do, because it's really split up into like the Paris Island, them training to become Marines, and then like actual Vietnam. So I figured we'd at least start off with the beginning part, since I feel like most people remember this most for this. But before jumping into specifics, so Foster, what are some of your general feelings about the film?
Sure. So my favorite Kubrick is The Shining, which I've seen many times. This one I've only seen a couple of times because I'm still younger, and so a lot of these more intense movies are like I've seen them for the first time within the past like 5 years or so. But
very fair.
It was just one of those ones that I was watching because there are so many movies that are considered like essential viewing if you're a movie fan. It's pretty overwhelming.
Sure is.
Yeah, but this was one that I watched like in some long stack of movies a couple summers ago and loved it pretty instantly. So as far as the first half, I think the main thought that I have when watching it is just how influential it is. I don't know if there's a more influential war movie out there, at least as far as like the 70s 80s Vietnam era war movie. Like it's impossible to watch any boot camp scene and not think of Full Metal Jacket. Like Cherry, that came out whenever that came out, I was watching that, I was like, this is just Full Metal Jacket but worse.
Which it's interesting because I made a comment while watching the film that like most people don't remember a whole lot about the second half of the film, because like the first half of the film is so iconic and people tend to just talk about that. And Jess, my fiance, was like, but why? Because like after watching it, she's just like, the second half is awesome and intense. And I'm like, I feel like it's because there's much more iconic Vietnam films. Like you have Platoon, and you have like, those are usually the films that people think about. But to your point, I don't think really anything more iconic in terms of like boot camp of military than Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah.
Because like you said, watching Cherry earlier this year, you're just like, somebody watch Full Metal Jacket. Yeah. And but they didn't have R. Lee Ermey to make it as, or then it's not Stanley Kubrick. Sorry, Russo brothers, you're not Stanley Kubrick. But there's just something so iconic about everything that happens. And honestly, R. Lee Ermey is like a big part of that. Yeah. And it's so interesting because he was a drill sergeant. He had done these things for real. And you can tell because he's ridiculously natural doing all of this. And I think this would be a fun question. What are some of your favorite insults?
Oh, I'm not sure I should quote them on this public platform. Let's
just put it this way.
Yeah.
These are not kid-friendly things, nor are they. There are a lot of things that a self-respecting human being wouldn't say to another human being.
They're pretty fantastic though. I like "You're so ugly you could be a modern art masterpiece." That's pretty classic.
And that's one of the toned down ones.
Yeah.
Because like there's a lot of sexual things, there's a lot of racist things. And it's like, what was a cowboy that he yells at, "How tall are you?" "Oh, I didn't know they stack piles of shit that high."
Yeah. Oh no.
And it's just like, oh my.
I know, it's overwhelming. Like every 5 seconds out of his mouth, there's something new. It's like,
yes. And like, I don't think most people would say, "Oh, I thought that Stanley Kubrick movie was really funny."
Yeah.
Because like generally they're not.
Yeah.
They're like, there might be a few moments depending on a few of them, but like Clockwork Orange is like really, really, really darkly funny. And like you have to have a pretty disturbing sense of humor. Like this is just like peak jerk things to say to people in a really creative way. And also so dehumanizing. And that's the point, because they're trying to tear them down. And it's such an interesting change of tone throughout this first part of the film, because like right off the bat, you have this like fun, like musical number and everybody getting their head shaved. Mm-hmm. And it's such a setup. And then bam, there you go. He comes in, starts absolutely tearing everybody to pieces.
Yeah.
And it's interesting with like Matthew Modine in this film as Joker, because he's our protagonist. And because Foster, are you a fan of Muse, the band?
The band?
Mm-hmm.
Not, I know them and know a few songs, but not like a super fan or anything.
Have you heard of the song Psycho?
I don't think so.
So it's literally about this, how the military like tears human beings down and turns them into killing machines. Mm-hmm. And there's like dialogue between a drill sergeant and a young man where it's like, show me your war face. Ah! And it's just like, well, I think Muse watched Full Metal Jacket too. And because like this is such an influential thing.
Yeah.
But let's talk a little bit about Private Pyle. Mm-hmm. So what are your thoughts on this character and Vincent D'Onofrio's performance in this?
I love Vincent D'Onofrio. I think that he's amazing in this movie. Mm-hmm. And he's another one of those actors who, like, when he's on, he's on. I love him in Daredevil. I think he's so good. I'm actually got the Nelson and Murdoch shirt, coincidentally.
Nice.
I also, have you seen The Cell with J-Lo?
I have not.
So it's not the best movie. Uh-huh. J-Lo is not necessarily the most engaging protagonist, but he is in it. And it does this sort of like a Nightmare on Elm Street, Inception, like dream world thing in the mind of Vincent D'Onofrio, who plays the serial killer. So you get these really crazy images. It's pretty wild. It's very worth watching, even though it's probably like a B- type of movie. But he's pretty great. Also, Men in Black. We're just turning this into the Vincent D'Onofrio podcast.
Sugar water.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of when he's in the truck and he's trying to prop his arm up to look natural.
So he is such a talented actor, and I don't think a lot of actors could have pulled that role off in Men in Black.
Yeah.
And he just commits to it because like he has to make himself grotesque and disgusting. And I feel like he's the kind of actor that, like, there's definitely actors out there that won't take certain roles because like they're leading men and they have a certain look about them. And like, no, Vincent D'Onofrio, like, he will commit to his role.
Yeah.
And being a child of a mother who watched every single Law and Order ever created, watching so many episodes of him on Criminal Intent was a delight because like he made that show. Like he was such an interesting character. And then but like Daredevil, his Wilson Fisk.
Yes.
Oh, like when they introduce him, he's like, makes me feel alone. And like Vanessa.
Yeah, and I was a boy.
Like he is intimidating and scary, and he does such a great job in this film of being vulnerable and weak. And then his transformation in the first half of this film, when he like really gets into shape, and it's disturbing to look at him. Mm-hmm. And I feel so bad for him when they beat him with the soap.
Yeah.
And the way he's crying and breaking down afterwards. Oh, that was one of those, like, there's like two moments that I think are really, really Kubrick in the first half of this film. That's one of them. And they even have the music in the background, those weird, ethereal kind of score moments. And of course, the climax of this first half of the film.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that. So can you remember the first time you watched this film? Did you know about what happens in this film at that point?
All I knew is I think I had seen a photo of Vincent D'Onofrio's like creepy face, you know?
Yeah.
I think that's all. Yes. I knew there was something, but I didn't really know what it was. But I mean, even because I rewatched it yesterday, it is just as intense. I mean, they got throughout the movie, you got that creepy, like pulsating, like music in the background,
Yes.
Woo.
It's like I didn't
Yeah.
actually I didn't check, but like it felt like the same kind of music from The Shining.
Mm-hmm.
It had that like and Clockwork Orange. It's just like that weird, like it's hard to describe because it doesn't really sound like music.
Yeah.
It sounds like these
Yeah.
disturbing sounds just penetrating you. And of course, D'Onofrio was definitely channeling his best Jack Torrance glares, the whole
Yeah. Slow zoom.
yes. And it's so shocking. And like when my fiance was like, you know what a Full Metal Jacket is, right? And I'm like, oh, the movie will tell you.
Yeah.
When he's sitting on the toilet doing the whole thing, Full Metal Jacket. And I'm just like, no. And Joker's just standing there like, what's going on here?
I know.
And you as an audience member are like, what's going on here? And the second he shoots this drill sergeant in the chest and that slow motion shot of just exploding, and I'm just like, oh my God.
I know.
And so my brother loves this movie.
Yeah.
And he watched this a lot when I was younger. And I'm pretty sure I had seen this scene, not watching the whole thing altogether. And I happened to see this scene. I'm like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And it's such a, like, obviously it's the most iconic moment in this film. And it's such a powerful and disturbing scene that really channels exactly what this film's trying to say about the military. Because it's like, I think when, you know, they're all standing around, they had just graduated, and the drill sergeant was giving them all of their like placements. And it's that close-up shot of Pyle when he's told that he made it. And like the drill sergeant's acting like, you made it, kid. You're going to Vietnam. And like you could see like the dead inside behind Vincent D'Onofrio's eyes, and like something bad's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I can't imagine the first time watching this film thinking that was gonna happen.
Yeah.
And it's just so shocking and powerful. But obviously we talked about that moment. Are there any other moments in this first half of the film that really stand out to you?
I mean, another one of those good, like, dead in the eyes moments is when they're doing the gun routine and they're all saying their chant, but Pyle is just silent. You know, that's another good one too. Yeah, in the second half of the first half, there's a lot of that with him. And I think what you said like 10 minutes ago about how the movie is pretty surprisingly funny. Like it's probably his second or third funniest movie, Full Metal Jacket, like after Dr. Strangelove and maybe Lolita. I don't know.
Peter Sellers is really funny in that movie, and that's also another film that's just like, I feel bad laughing.
I love Peter Sellers in Lolita, when I think this is the first time you see him, when he's got the like glasses and photographer persona or something. I've only seen it once, but he's like doing this like really deadpan dance where his face is just completely expressionless, but his arms are doing the most ridiculous things. He's so funny. But I think it works because in the first 10-15 minutes of the movie, you're mostly laughing, and then slowly like the insults begin to wear you down and you realize what the point of the movie is. And even Pyle in the beginning, he's smiling when R. Lee Ermey is lobbing his insults, and then in the bathroom scene at the conclusion of his art, he's smiling again, but in a sort of completely dehumanized, empty way. It's like not a smile of happiness.
Well, and I'm trying to think some of the last moments that you actually see some life in Pyle. It's like when Joker takes him to the side and starts like teaching him on his own, and it's just the two of them, and like you could see the little smirks on Vincent D'Onofrio's face because he's getting it.
Yeah,
he's just all like, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And it's just like those moments are so nice. And then this film has so many like specific moments that trigger tonal shifts. And obviously, like the soap scene is like that moment where it's like, this is no longer going to be fun anymore.
Mm-hmm.
This first half of the film, and it just gets dark. And Pyle is a completely different person after that point. And it's so interesting because, like, Joker gets that name for a reason. He just rebels against any kind of authority. And he's such an interesting protagonist to have in this film.
Yeah.
Along the way, because, like, he sees through the absurdity of it all. And he calls it out. And that's why he got promoted. Like, that moment where he takes over for Snowball was because, like, he's like, if I change my mind, you just get mad at me worse. And like the drill sergeant's like, it's similar to that moment where it's just like, obviously Forrest Gump was saying it out of ignorance, where the drill sergeant calls him a genius. I think it's like that same kind of energy where the drill sergeant realized Joker's probably like the actual smartest person in the room and should probably be in charge, even though he might be a little reckless potentially with, because like Joker's not going to be the one that's going to like listen to every order kind of thing, but he might challenge a little bit. And there's definitely characters like that in Kubrick war films, because, you know, that's Kirk Douglas in Paths of Glory. He isn't just a yes man, which is also why he doesn't get along so well with some of his superiors in that film. But it's interesting because I really appreciated this look back into Kubrick's filmography, because I remember watching Barry Lyndon and this for the first time and not really remembering the protagonists very well, and just writing them off as like, oh, they weren't very interesting. But like rewatching them now, pushing 30, instead of like not 18 or 19, it's just like there's so much more going on with Ryan O'Neal and Barry Lyndon, and so much going on with Matthew Modine in this film. And I guess at this point then, Foster, do you have anything else that you wanted to add about the Paris Island section of this film?
I'll just second Matthew Modine. I think he's great. And then my last point about the first half then, and one of the reasons why I like Kubrick movies, even beyond the stories and characters, it's really well shot. Like, I mean, when they're, especially, well, two things. When they're inside and you just see the rows of people that R. Lee Ermey is marching past, like it's very clinical the way he shoots things almost. It's so good.
That steady cam.
Yeah.
And tracking backwards.
when they're outside and they're on the, whatever you call that thing, when they're climbing the stuff, you know what I mean?
Obstacle courses, yeah.
Obstacle course, yeah. I love when you have your main like 5 to 10 people you're focusing on, but just in the background you see like 100 little small in the distance people doing their own little thing. That kind of thing really gets me whenever movies have just a million extras. Spartacus does this, like when the soldiers are marching slowly for that 5-minute scene. So I love that stuff.
And in Paths of Glory, it was so I watched that film twice this year because it was the first film that I did on my movie club for my podcast with some of my friends, and then obviously rewatching it for this scene where they do the charge across no man's land. There's so many people to pay attention to, and so many, because like it's such a great wide shot, and they're all real people. Like, these aren't CGI people. This is from like the 50s, 60s. So like, and you see like some of them are messing up a little bit and they're probably not the best extras. But like, it's so interesting being able to see it because it's a fully fleshed out world. Like, this is really happening kind of thing. And Kubrick did such a great job of scope with his camera work. And it's definitely seen a lot in the second half of the film. And I think this might be a nice segue because let's go to Vietnam. So when we get into that second half of the film, the production design and the camera work is some of the best, I feel like, in Vietnam films. And especially the climax of the film. And like, you could say it's pretty obvious, but like how hellish that building looks at the very end of the film. And it's so perfectly set up with like the random flames just sitting around everywhere. And it's like, that's where Joker went. He went all the way to hell and to the place where I don't think he ever wanted to go. But this war took him there.
Yeah.
And it's obviously, if you watch the show, you know that we spoil things, but like
it's a little late for that.
Yeah. Just a little bit.
Yeah.
But was so shocking to me. I remember the first time watching this, who that sniper turns out to be.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like that captures the war in such a nutshell. Because when you think about wars, you think about a bunch of men shooting at each other. This is a young girl killing them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, who could blame her? At that point, it's just like, we're invading and destroying a lot of things. And it isn't like old school war where it's just like a bunch of dudes walking at each other in an open field.
Yeah.
It's like, it's destroying everything.
Yeah.
And there's so many really uncomfortable moments in this second half of this film about Vietnam that leads up to that moment. And it's just like, of course they're going to fight back kind of thing. But I guess, Foster, what are some of your main thoughts about the second half of the film?
Sure. Just going off the visuals that you mentioned first, this sequence, the second half, maybe the first half too, I'm not sure, was in London. That's where they shot this. You would think you would think they went to Vietnam or something, or did like what Apocalypse Now did and like went in the middle of the jungle with their helicopters. But no,
maybe he learned his lesson from Francis Ford Coppola.
Yeah, but like with the palm trees, I think they flew in palm trees or something like that. You know how you just do that, you just fly in a few palm trees, and like the buildings that are falling apart and on fire. Looks amazing. I mean, horrible, but for what it's trying to do, amazing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This also brings me back to another conversation while watching this with my fiance. Was I made a comment about how amazing the production design is in Kubrick films, except for Eyes Wide Shut, because that failed miserably at trying to make London look like New York City. Because I remember I've talked to so many people watching Eyes Wide Shut, and they're just like, this is supposed to be New York? And it's just like, it does not look like New York at all. But like, he wouldn't leave London. So he just did what he did. And that's such an interesting thing, because like the final shot, like the final scenes of this film in like the destroyed buildings, and like that looks like a war zone. But nope. Just somewhere in London. Just set this all up.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting, there's such great filmmaking in that whole section of the film, because like how he builds the suspense with the sniper and the camera work and the long takes, the lingering shots, the one shot of when Cowboy gets up and is like standing there, and you can see the deep focus that there's a hole in that building. You can see a window in the background, and you're just like, that's not smart. And then of course what happens and how that camera, he gets shot and the camera zooms in right to that window, where it makes it so obvious that was not a great place to be standing. And there's so much great camera work like that in that climax of the film.
Yeah, he loves his zooms.
Whether you're zooming in on a man in a dog suit, or if you're zooming into a sniper in a window.
Either one.
Because like, honestly, that's probably the creepiest zoom I've seen in a Kubrick film, was from The Shining. Like, what the hell?
I
know. But it's so interesting in this second half of the film, because there's such memorable characters in the first half of the film, and there's equally memorable characters in the second half of the film. It's just not like, I don't think anybody's going to be as iconic as Arlie Ermey's character or Pyle, but like, was it Adam Baldwin? Jane from Firefly and Serenity. He is such a piece of crap, but animal mother. And like he is like the prototypical like this dude like Vietnam was his place. And him just that whole sequence where Cowboy's like, hold your fire, and like you can tell Mother's not listening to him at all.
Yeah.
And he's just doing whatever the hell he wants. And the way that he goats Joker at the end of the film with that girl was so messed up.
Yeah.
Where it's just like that girl's obviously laying there suffering and like not putting her out of her misery and just gonna leave her there to die like that.
Yeah.
And you know, that I think the scene that disturbed me the most this time around, and I don't know why I didn't remember this scene from the couple of times I watched this before, was when they're on the helicopter.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is probably the most Vietnam thing about this movie. When that guy is just shooting, because like, it was interesting too, because it's interesting watching things with other people, because like Jess was making comments of like, why is he just like shooting out the window? Because like you can from that angle in the helicopter, you can't tell what he's actually shooting at. But the second they cut to what he was shooting at, that just became so much more disturbing. And you're just like, well, this guy's a psychopath.
Yeah.
And it's like that's definitely the scene that this time around that sat with me the most after watching this film.
And then doesn't Matthew Modine ask him like, how can you shoot women and children or something like that? And then at the end of the movie, of course, he has to shoot someone who is both a woman and essentially a child. So
and that's what's so interesting about that journey, and what's so shocking and a great reveal about who that sniper is, because it really does pull it all the way back around and puts Joker in that horrible situation that he has to deal with.
Yeah.
And it's messed up. And it's disturbing, and it's really unfortunate. And like in the end, he wasn't the one who like did the initial shooting of her. He tried, and didn't work out very well for him. And then even just a small thing, when his fellow photographer came in and shot her, that camera work of him like following him around through that space and everything, just a little added in there of like Kubrick just knowing how to create a space.
Yeah. And rewinding 20 minutes to when they're behind the wall before they go into the sniper territory, that scene is very stressful. And I was watching like one of the features on the Blu-ray afterwards. It seems like it was probably, maybe they weren't acting, because apparently they had to be right on that strip of wall for about a month, which is kind of crazy. And there was one story that is kind of hilarious where Adam Baldwin was talking about, doing a million takes for Kubrick. And at one point, Adam Baldwin says something like, gosh, what does he want? And then Kubrick from behind the camera just says, better acting or something like that, and then goes back. It's like, it's horrible, but also kind of hilarious.
Oh, what a zinger right there.
I know.
What a zinger. That's so interesting, because like you have The Shining, which is legendary in terms of the amount of on-set abuse that Kubrick had. And like some of the big stories, like obviously Shelley Duvall was like pushed beyond the brink. And even Jack Nicholson was just like, what does this man want from me? And he just kept getting more exaggerated.
Yeah.
And him basically tricking George C. Scott into doing a comedic performance in Doctor Strangelove, because George C. Scott just kept doing the film straight, and he kept pushing him every take. And then his performance became bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah. And that's what Kubrick wanted. So he just kept pushing him. And how the hell did it take him a year to shoot Eyes Wide Shut? Like, it was in active production for 365 days. How? Like, and even that is probably one of the, maybe besides the outrageous orgy sequence in that film is not the most complicated film of his filmography. Like, obviously, this one's like a war film. There's all kinds of effects that you have to do in the second half of this film, the explosions, the shooting, the fires, the damage, everything. But like, it's miraculous that anybody signed up to do films with him.
Yeah.
But you're in a Kubrick film. Yeah. So his name goes a long way, I guess. Mm-hmm. But that's hilarious because like most of the actors in this film are young actors. Mm-hmm. And R. Lee Ermey wasn't an actor. Mm-hmm. He was a military consultant on the film who basically Kubrick's like, do your thing. And like all of which surprises me in so many ways that he let R. Lee Ermey just do his thing. Mm-hmm. Because Kubrick seemed like such a control freak about everything. Mm-hmm. But except apparently that. Yeah. Just let him do his thing. But trying to think like one other, like the whole negotiating with the sex worker scene was very interesting. I think probably the other scene that really stood out from like a disturbing standpoint in this section of the film is when they're talking about it's that guy's party and it was just a dead guy sitting in the chair.
That was the one that got me this time.
And they're just sitting there taking pictures with the dead body. Mm-hmm. It's just like, what the hell is wrong with the people in this movie? Like the characters and like this kind of stuff happened. It's just like, this is really messed up and disturbing. And like, there's no wonder there's films like Apocalypse Now and this that take a look at like how disturbing and screwed up things turned out in the Vietnam War in terms of that. And I think from a thematic standpoint, one of the other big moments in this half of the film was the whole peace sign and Born to Kill conversation.
Yeah, and the duality of man, the Jungian thing, or Jungian thing.
That was definitely one of my favorite Matthew Modine moments in this film, where he was just selling that because, like, it's like you're taking a whole bunch of many just regular people, throwing them in these situations and expecting them to kill people. But I guess, Foster, do you have any other thoughts, things that you wanted to bring up about the second half of the film?
Probably like the moment we log off the call, I'll think of 5 things. Off the top of my head, no. I will say of the big Vietnam movies, I think this is my favorite, even though probably Apocalypse Now, if you have to vote one as the best, most iconic one, that's probably it. But yeah, I think this is my favorite. I'm not the biggest fan of The Deer Hunter. I completely get it. Like it makes sense to me, but as I'm watching it, I'm like, it's a little long.
So I actually have something to admit too. I have watched it once and have never wanted to pick it up again.
Yep, same here.
Because the first hour of that movie is just that wedding. And I'm like, it felt like out of like Monty Python, The Holy Grail. Get on with it. like it's basically the Hobbit Unexpected Journey, where it's like, he's going on an adventure 50 minutes into the movie. And it's just like, did this really? Because like, obviously films need to set up character and characters are important. But did you need that much at that wedding to lead up to that point?
Yeah.
But like, obviously, like the Vietnam stuff, the Russian roulette stuff, that's some of the most incredible filmmaking of building of tension. But like getting there was a chore for me, which is why I've never gone back and watched it again.
Yeah, and Platoon is another one that's really well made, but it's not exactly like a fun romp, for a Friday night or anything. Full Metal Jacket, for me, like Full Metal Jacket is fun at parts, like with the R. Lee Ermey stuff. So it's not like a slog to get through. I actually felt like it moved by really fast when I was watching it yesterday.
I was sitting and watching, I'm like, how is this only 2 hours?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, we're booking it through here. And it's almost like split 50-50, like complete like 1 hour. And like that first half just moves.
It was like 20 minutes.
Yeah, because it's such an interesting play of pace and tone, because it does set you up. Okay, we're laughing, we're having a good time, not expecting this out of a Kubrick movie. And then before you know it, you've settled into a much darker movie, and it doesn't linger long enough for you to think, oh, we're shifting now. Mm-hmm. It just has such a natural pace and transition about it. Mm-hmm. And then even the second half of the film went very briskly. Mm-hmm. And then I was like sitting there, I'm like, there's only 20 minutes left and we're heading to the end. And because like most of the second half of the film, I wasn't as keen on remembering a lot of, but like I knew the whole end, like the climax of the film, like, okay, we're in it now. Mm-hmm. And I guess all the way up until the very end, which has one strange ending.
Yeah.
Singing the Mickey Mouse song, which I think is up there with that beautiful, like, jovial song that they play at the end of Doctor Strangelove to all the bombs going off. Like, perfect Kubrick ending where he's just like, I'm going to mess with you. And you're not going to know how to feel about this. And that's the thing, because it's taking something so innocent and so like meaningful for you as a child and putting them basically in hell, because they're walking through the pitch black, all the fires going on in the background, and just all of that. Mm-hmm. It's just so disturbing to sit and watch them, just like, why are they singing the Mickey Mouse song?
Yeah.
And if you think about it, they're a bunch of 18-year-olds.
Yeah.
They're kids. Legal adults, mm-hmm. but not full-fledged, fully developed men who've mm-hmm. lived through life. No, these are still a bunch of teenagers.
Yeah,
doing these things, and I think that's such an interesting way for him to wrap up this film, but such a Kubrick thing.
Yeah, and it works well with Matthew Modine being the main character, because like the end scene, you're showing the contrast between like the innocence of the Mickey Mouse song and the world on fire behind them, and then Matthew Modine being like this funny, likable, charming, sociable person in the middle of war, basically. And like you can't help but feel the whole time, you're like, he doesn't belong here.
Exactly.
He have like a perfectly happy, successful, normal life outside of this, as could probably many of the people there. But yeah. Because like the theme of the movie, if it's one word, it's dehumanization, I guess. That's the Vincent D'onofrio part in the first half. And then even Matthew Modine by the end of the movie. It's like slowly, one by one, all the characters that you liked at the beginning become like hard to root for, I guess, by the end of the movie.
Yeah, and pushed to places where they never felt comfortable or would ever want to be.
Yeah.
And you're stuck in it with them. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately. But that's Full Metal Jacket. And I appreciated this conversation about the film, because I was excited to talk about this one, because like I have plenty of conversations with people about 2001, The mm-hmm. Shining, A Clockwork Orange, but not this one, honestly. I'm even more interested about Eyes Wide Shut next week. Yeah. And especially because so many people wanted to talk about it.
Yeah.
Because I have if everybody can make a time work, it's going to be 5 people.
5? Okay. Who is it? It's Aaron, Robert, Frank, someone else?
And Vinny, who... Vinny usually only does the best ever challenges, but like Vinny's a friend of mine. We've known each other since like 2010. So like I got him involved in SiftPop. So I'm really hoping everybody can make it, because I'm going to have such a fun time. Because let's be real here. I'm pretty sure that's the hardest one to talk about.
Sure.
Because it's all about sexual desire. And I don't think a whole lot of people, just in general, and I think it's part of our culture, it's hard to talk about sex like that openly. Mm-hmm. And, that's Super probably made it.
Yeah, also, because this is going on the internet, right?
Yes.
Got to be careful.
Yes, because this is immortalized on the internet.
Yeah.
People will know what you thought, what
Yes.
you said. But we're wrapping up here then, shifting gears into our final segment of the show, which is our recommendations. And I'm actually really excited about Foster. So, Foster, what are you recommending to all the kind folks listening in today?
I'm going to recommend the movie CODA, which came out, I think, a couple weeks ago. I don't know the date on Apple TV Plus.
It was the beginning of August or something around there.
Sure, that sounds right. I'll trust you. I think it was doing its. Was it at some festivals before this? I'm not super up on festivals.
Sundance. I think it was Sundance and killed it.
Yeah.
And Apple broke the record that Hulu set last summer with Palm Springs. Palm Springs was bought for $20 million. This was bought for $25 million.
Yeah.
And is the highest per distribution purchase of any film ever at a film festival.
That's interesting. Yeah. I'm well, just to talk about the movie.
Yep.
CODA stands for Child of Deaf Adults, but it also has another meaning because CODA is a musical term. And so the movie follows a child of deaf adults who is really into music and singing. And of course, that creates some complications because the one passion that this young girl has in life cannot be appreciated fully by her family members. There's even one line where the mom, played by Marlee Matlin, says something like, because she's upset about this, she's like, if I were blind, would you want to be a painter or something like that? Oof. But I mean, the way I'm describing it makes it sound like some depressing slog, but it's actually really fun, and it's funny too, and it's creative in its humor. Like there's one scene in the beginning that's a family dinner, except the family's deaf, so it's silent, but the way they're able to make jokes and communicate with each other is pretty creative, pretty fun. And all the characters in this movie are great. The family is super lovable, especially the main actress whose name I'm blanking on. But really great. She's a great singer too. Like every time she sings, it's just, ooh, okay. I love this movie.
I got the special pleasure of doing a special podcast episode with Aaron about this.
Yes, I listened.
Every time I go on to that, it turns into being at least 3 times longer than we ever anticipated.
Yeah.
I have a lot of things to say about movies. But Amelia Jones, who plays Ruby, is fantastic. Marlee Matlin is fantastic actress. Troy Kotsur, who is the dad, is absolutely hilarious.
Yes.
And also has the moment that hit me emotionally the hardest watching this. And just to put in perspective, so I watched this, basically Aaron and I do every Apple TV Plus screener that comes out in the screening room together for the podcast. And I was watching this on a Saturday morning, and generally I could get through a whole movie generally before my fiance wakes up. I'm a morning person. She is not. And she came down with like maybe a third of this movie left. And she was like, "Are you okay?" Because like I was like visibly upset watching this movie, because it definitely has those moments. But there's also moments where I was laughing out loud watching this movie. It hits on all the emotions, and this is one of the most wonderful surprises of the year. Like this and Shiva Baby have to be 2 of the most joyous movie experiences I've had this year, of like small little films that I had not heard of before this year that like just grabbed me. And I just loved every moment of it. And like, you could probably see and guess every plot point that's going to go along here, but it's so amazingly emotional. The characters are so great, and how this film flows, that you even forget how predictable the movie is because you're just lost in it. And it's such a wonderful film. So you all should go get Apple TV Plus if you don't have it, and go watch CODA. There you go. It's definitely, because like Apple TV Plus is like $5-6. So like you can watch this, and then you can watch all of Ted Lasso.
Yes.
Because you should. That's also something you should totally watch. Apple TV Plus is slowly becoming one of my favorite streaming services.
Yeah, they're building a good library slowly.
Because I was a bit iffy at the start, because like basically they came out with 5 series, I'm pretty sure, morning show, which I enjoyed, thought could have been better and expected better from like the ridiculous amount of talent in that show. C was interesting, but like didn't really have a whole lot of depth to it. It was just like basically Jason Momoa ripping people to pieces.
Yeah, and now Dave Bautista's coming in, I think, and they want to do a buddy cop movie together.
Yeah, I watched the first episode of the new season. I'm like, yep, they're continuing to tear people apart. And like a lot of, but it's like, it's interesting to watch.
Yeah.
I love Dickinson. I do love that show with Haley Steinfeld. And what else came out? For All Mankind. I feel like it's gotten better as the show's gone on, but like I was a little hesitant, but then they've come out with some great stuff and I'm like, dang, I really like Apple TV Plus now. Like even stuff like Schmigadoon, I had so much fun with that. Central Park's definitely grown on me. So general just recommendation, check out Apple TV Plus.
Also, they did a documentary called Voice State, which is one of my favorite recent documentaries. I thought that was really interesting.
You know what's really interesting is they do New Jersey Boys State at Rider University where I work at. And I've seen those kids in their khaki shorts walking all around for the past like summers working at Rider, not really understanding really what they're doing.
Yeah.
And now I'm afraid. Now I'm like,
it's not the most encouraging documentary.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
And I'm like, are you the next like because like it's interesting because like there's a lot of politicians that are like politicians today that start in Boys State and specifically Texas Boys State, and I'm like, oh no, this is potentially very perturbing to me. So next time I see all those kids walking around in their khaki shorts being like, I hope you grow up to do good. Because I'm a little concerned. But yeah, Boys State's such a fantastic documentary. It's a great film. Like it felt like one of those kinds of documentaries where it's like it felt like a narrative film in many ways. Like obviously it was a documentary. But my recommendation, fresh off the presses, so like when this releases, it's going to be out a week, is Candyman. Because I got a screener for it. And Foster, is this something that you're going to head out to see in theaters?
Yeah, I'm going to do it tomorrow.
Okay.
Busy-ish weekend, so I haven't seen it yet, but I'm very excited for it.
It's 90 minutes. Maybe, and like I think a lot of people are feeling like that was probably too short.
Yeah.
It's one of those films where it's like they could have done so much more. I would have sat through I personally would have sat through like another 40 minutes of this movie. Yeah. Like, because Nia DaCosta is such an inventive director when it comes to scares. And there are some disturbing things that happen in this movie. And I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to be extremely vague because I don't want to ruin anything, but the acting is fantastic. The visuals are amazing. And it is a messed up movie. And it has a lot to say. And I like Jordan Peele co-wrote it. I didn't realize that. I thought he only produced it because I knew it was a monkey paw, as I'm imagining the creepy monkey paw stirring from the graphic. But like, I was really impressed with it. I've seen some more criticisms of it being a bit messy and being a little on the nose, but like, it is a bit messy. And this is also coming from somebody who had never watched another Candyman film. So I knew nothing. And apparently there's things that would have been helpful to watch the first movie, but I still got plenty out of it. So I was very happy with it.
Is it scary?
And so this is coming from somebody who gets scared real easy. I was sitting watching this Tuesday night at like 11 o'clock at night. I'm like, I'm not going to sleep tonight. It was disturbing and creepy and built such great tension because like it isn't jump scares and stuff like that. It's really inventive with what they do and disturbing and gory. So it's more that kind of thing. Like, I feel like a lot of people, it's like they think of like the Conjuring movies, like scares the living crap out of me, those movies. But like this is the kind of thing that's gonna like crawl up into your brain and you're just gonna be thinking about it for a long time afterwards. And hopefully not thinking about some of the imagery that you see in this movie, because it's pretty messed up. So I'm gonna leave it at that. But you should all go check out CODA on Apple TV Plus and Candyman in theaters, which I'm guessing it's a Universal film, so it's going to be out on VOD in 17 days anyway. So like, if you don't catch it in the theater, it's coming home real quick. So you're all going to get a chance to enjoy it. I watch it on a screener, so I obviously watch it at home. So, but I think it would have been really cool to watch this in a theater. So I'm interested to hear what you think, Foster.
We'll let you know. I'm hoping to see it tomorrow. That's my plan.
And we'll see. But Foster, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And double checking my recording schedule to see when we might potentially be seeing Foster coming back on the show, which will be like in December.
King of comedy, right?
Yes. I'm just looking at my schedule for Martin Scorsese being like, because Foster knows I reached out to everybody in the Slack SiftPop group. And people are like, I want this film. I'm like, I'll see you in March.
Yes.
Because I'm legitimately the last one will be The Irishman. And that's going to post on June 17th.
Wow.
I'm going to be doing a lot of Martin Scorsese.
Are you doing like his concert documentaries and things like that?
So it took me a while to really sift through his IMDb to figure out what I'm going to watch and what I'm not going to watch. I basically took out anything that's like a short film or a music video, because I know he did Michael Jackson music videos.
He's going to review Bad.
I could. But I did leave in 2 concert films. I left in The Last Waltz and Shine a Light because I feel like they're like substantial concert films that have made like an impact. Like I own The Last Waltz. It's somewhere right over there. I haven't watched Shine a Light yet, and then he has a lot of interesting documentaries that I want to check out and talk about. One of them's like a 3-hour George Harrison documentary.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm down. And it's so interesting because like, I'm a huge Marvel fan, but I'm not the kind of person to like, because like, I don't agree with Martin Scorsese about what he said is what is and what is not cinema. But I'm not going to be the kind of person to go at Martin Scorsese like, he needs to stop talking about Marvel movies because all he does is gangster movies. And I'm like, no, that's not true.
Yeah.
Like Silence, Last Temptation of Christ, Kundun, King of Comedy. Like, he obviously is really known for The Departed, Goodfellas, Casino. I guess Gangs in New York, it has gangs in the name of it. But like, that's and The Irishman, but that's like a very small part of his career when you think about it. And like, my favorite film of his, as of now, because I haven't seen all of them, is Taxi Driver. So it's not even one of his gangster movies. So it's like, no. But I'm very interested to take a deep dive. And you're going to be part of it, and so is a lot of other people.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a fun time. But Foster, thank you again for coming on. And thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.